Now, on Planet America, a rather rare insight into the highest levels of the US intelligence community and the inner workings of the Obama administration. Admiral Dennis Blair was the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI, until 2 years ago. He oversaw 16 intelligence agencies in total, including the CIA and the FBI. During Blair's time, al-Qaeda operative Umar Farouk Abdulmuttalib came close to downing Flight 523 with plastic explosives over over Norfolk. And he had those plastic explosives sewn into his underwear. In the wake of that failed attack, Admiral Blair fell out with the White House over, among other things, its policy to escalate predator drone strikes. I spoke to Admiral Blair this week in Sydney. Admiral Blair, welcome to the program.
No, nice to be here.
You were the DNI at the time of the 2009 Christmas Day bombing attempt, the so-called underpants bombing. That, in many ways, certainly in this country at least, it was treated with a certain amount of humour because the bomb was in the underpants.
Right.
How serious was it, though? How close did that attack get?
It was quite serious. I think we had al-Qaeda on the run enough at that time that they didn't have time for this multi-months, carefully coordinated set of planning which had characterized 9/11. That's a good thing. On a bad thing, they'd taken a technological leap beyond some of the technological defenses that we had put up. Had he succeeded, there would have been about 130 people on that plane who would have died. And we took the opportunity to do an awful lot of work again. And what was interesting was that we had learned the lessons of 9/11. There was no reluctance to share information. In fact, the actual problem was there was so much information being shared, so much being generated, that the difficulty was picking out the important from the mass of information that was coming across. And we used the opportunity. My military background is if there's a near miss, you don't do anything except study it and do better and next time. And we did a lot of that, and I think we're the stronger for it in terms of trying to fix some of the things that were not as good as they could have been.
Was that the kind of attack where the technology suddenly advances in a way that you maybe can't detect that new kind of bomb that was involved in Christmas Day? Was that the nightmare scenario? I mean, what was the kind of thing that would keep you and others up at night?
That wasn't so much the nightmare thing. That type of explosive had been used. Had been invented by this Yemen bomb maker, and it was known that it could not be detected by the basically metal-based detectors that we were using at the time. And these whole-body scanners, I don't know if you've had the pleasure of going to one of them, would detect it, and that was in the process of being deployed at the time that it happened. As you know, the 9/11 Commission said that there had been a failure of imagination, which basically did not conceive the idea that these attacks, which had been concentrated basically in the Middle East area before, the Khobar Towers, the embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, that they would be taken into the United States. Knowing that, we spent quite a bit of time trying to think through what could be the next step. And, of course, the most terrifying one do involve weapons of mass destruction in which a small amount of material can, whether it be biological, chemical, or nuclear, cause even greater casualties than high explosives. And I think that is the nightmare scenario. And we in Australia and all of our, in fact, virtually all the countries around the world work very hard at trying to keep terrorists and either precursor chemicals or the weapons themselves apart.
One of the responses to the Christmas Day 2009 bombing and the connection of al-Qaeda in Yemen to that attack was an escalation of the Obama administration's predator drone program. I understand that you had some concerns about that at the time. What were your concerns with the drones?
My concerns with the drone program overall is that it's only one part of the final solution to this challenge that the United States and other countries face. We can't go on actively trying to kill members of al-Qaeda forever. And the drones have use of drones have bad effects in the countries that we use them. Resentment among the people, the idea that we're infringing on their sovereignty, when others are killed, and although it's a very small number compared to the use of other types of weapons, there are those who are not actual members of al-Qaeda who are killed, and of course there's resentment against that. There's a tendency among some, and I saw it in the administration, I certainly see it outside, that every drone attack is a good one. You make these lists on the wall and you put X's across people that you kill and all, and I don't think that's the long-term solution to this struggle that we're involved in.
The proponents of the program will say, well, it's certainly a more accurate way of taking out targets than an airstrike or a cruise missile, maybe not as targeted as a SEAL team, but you can't always send in a SEAL team. What would you say in terms of where on the scale and when is it appropriate to use these sorts of weapons?
I'd say it's far more preferable to have the country within whose borders these al-Qaeda and franchise organizations are living to police their own borders using their normal intelligence and law enforcement techniques, and to actually go with people, policemen, maybe backed up by army forces, and arrest people who are members of al-Qaeda and who are going in virtually every case against the host government as well as against foreigners like the United States, Europeans, and Australians. That's the best way to do it for the long term, rather than the United States sitting off at a distance, flying high technology vehicles into other people's territories, doing it ourselves.
That empowerment of local forces and governments, would you take it to the extent of saying, you know what, Pakistan should have gone after bin Laden, we shouldn't have done that? Yeah,
if we thought it would have worked. If we thought it would have worked. I certainly, it's been said publicly that the United States decided not to go to Pakistan for fear that Pakistan would either not take action or worse, tip off bin Laden, and so he would leave. And I don't second guess that decision. That's pretty reasonable based on some of the Pakistani activity that we've seen in the past. But it is, isn't it, a sign that the relationship is not what it should be, because this is a common enemy. Far more Pakistanis have been killed by this band of terrorists up in their border areas, al-Qaeda, LTTE, TTP, this alphabet soup of organizations that share common goals in many cases, share logistics, share bomb training, share money, share expertise, and the eventual solution is for Pakistan to be able to police its territory and enforce its laws there, as countries do in other parts of the world.
What about the challenge posed by Syria? There are those, including Senator John McCain, who say we should be doing what we did in Libya in Syria. We should be providing, if not arms, certainly a lot more support, safe havens, no-fly zones. As it is, the President says nothing.
You know, John, I've learned over my career that sort of taking the so-called lessons from one situation and sort of transferring them rhetorically to a new situation is a recipe for bad policy. I think you have to look at them pretty carefully in their own rights. The United States has deployed major military force since the end of the Cold War back in 1990, 15 times, something like that. Most of them have been overall successful. The ones that haven't been successful or were far more difficult, although your heart goes out to the suffering of the Syrian people, which they don't deserve, and I'd be glad when President Bashar is gone, and the sooner the better. You have to just be a little bit more thoughtful in that before you blindly apply these military means. So I think we're thinking it through. Other countries who are concerned are thinking it through, and when they come up with a real understanding of how they can make it better, I think military force will be a component, but shouldn't lead with that just automatically when you see pictures of suffering on the YouTube.
A lot of the criticisms of the Obama administration's handling of the situation in Syria coming from senior Republicans like John McCain in the heat of an election year, but 5 months from now the Republicans could be back in charge.
They could own it, right.
So do you anticipate there would be a significant change in direction there? Is the difference between the two sides just in how loudly they rattle the sabre, or would Republicans take a more assertive, more interventionist role? Because they say right now America looks weak. Yeah,
I think that's largely what you say when you don't have the responsibility for doing it. I've been struck over the 7 or so administrations that I've serve, that when responsible people come into the job and actually have the responsibility for sending American men and women into combat where they'll be hurt and killed, causing the damage in these countries, thinking about what will happen in the long term, they become a little more temperate in their rhetoric and more careful in their decisions. So I think what we're seeing now is primarily looking for rhetorical advantage in an election campaign rather than something that will signal a tremendous shift in our readiness to use force. If you look back over time, Republicans have been about equally chary about committing military forces as have Democrats. I don't think you can make a general doctrine out of that.
Admiral Blair, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, John.